Hey everyone, welcome back to Tech Tuesdays with Skyrocket English. I'm your host, Sean, and today we're going to explore a big topic that is going to have a lot of impact in the world of technology, the European Union's new digital regulations. We'll start by unpacking the practical implications of the Digital Markets Act, DMA, as outlined in a recent CNBC article. From opening up app stores to introducing choice screens for search engines, these regulations are set to shake up the tech industry as we know it. But it's not just about the what of these regulations, it's also about the why. That's where we'll be exploring an article from Wired.com, where we'll delve into the philosophical underpinnings behind the EU's approach, from discussions of feudalism, yes, feudalism, to the power dynamics in the digital age. But before we dive in, make sure to hit that like button if you're ready to explore these complex issues with me. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the notifications bell so you never miss an update. All right, let's get started. All right, let's get right into today's topic about the European Union versus a bunch of tech giants, most of which are based in the United States. So this is something that's been a long time coming. There has been a lot of legislation as of late in the European Union to really crack down on how tech companies use data for European citizens. And now this is more of like a fair use challenge, a challenge against so-called monopolies within the tech industries, and kind of trying to open up basically fair trade, fair practice, fair business for European-based companies as well. So today we'll be exploring an article from CNBC called Big Tech Goes from Teenager to Grown-Up Under Landmark EU Law. Here's what you need to know. And of course, from my favorite website on all tech news, Wired.com, there is an article called Europe is Breaking Open the Empires of Big Tech. Okay, so as always, before we jump into the analysis of these articles, let's take a look at a couple of key vocabulary terms that we will need to understand before we get into the discussion. First of all, we have the term gatekeeper. So in this scenario, a gatekeeper is a person or thing that controls access to something. So you can think of it almost as like a bouncer for a bar or an immigration officer at the border of a country. You're not getting in, you're not getting access unless they say so. Okay? And then we have the term interoperable. Kind of a fun term to say, interoperable. So interoperable means able to readily connect and exchange information in either implementation or access without restriction. So you can think of now a lot of these websites will allow you to sign in with a Google account, a Facebook account. You can kind of sync up all your different accounts and all of them have access to the same kinds of services. So it's not just one service that's limited to being able to access something. It can be accessed through many avenues. Okay, and then we have a carousel. So normally a carousel is the thing at your local festival or fair, or sometimes here in Brazil we have them at a shopping mall for the kids to ride on. They spin around, they have horses on them, things like that. So in tech, a carousel refers to something just like this image. It's an elegant way to group related content together into one tactile space. So you kind of are able to scroll through a bunch of related things and see a bunch of different related topics. Could be postings for airline flights. In this case, it's a bunch of different albums that are possibly for sale. So that's what a carousel is. All right, now let's jump right into the first article from CNBC. We're breaking down the EU and the DMA. So the Digital Markets Act, now in effect, aims to regulate tech giants' practices and promote competition, signifying a major shift in the industry. According to the article, an EU law that seeks to rein in large digital companies has officially kicked in, spelling big changes for primarily US tech giants. The European Union's landmark Digital Markets Act officially became enforceable on Thursday. That means the European Commission, the EU's executive arm, can start taking action against companies that breach the rules. The Digital Markets Act aims to clamp down on anti-competitive practices from tech players, as well as to force them to open out some of their services to other competitors. Smaller internet firms and other businesses have complained about being hurt by the practices of these companies. The new law could inspire change in other countries like the US and the UK and ultimately force tech firms into global tweaks to their platforms. All right, now let's get into this term gatekeepers, which the EU defines under the DMA here. The Digital Markets Act primarily affects major US tech giants like Alphabet, Amazon, Apple, and Meta. These firms designated as gatekeepers must adhere to strict regulations to foster fair competition within the EU market. According to the article, the EU Digital Markets Act primarily impacts US tech giants, the likes of Alphabet, Amazon, Apple, and Meta. That's because the rules impose strict curbs for so-called gatekeepers, firms with an entrenched position in their respective market. So far, 6 firms have been designated gatekeepers: Alphabet, which is Google's parent company, if you're not familiar, Amazon, Apple, Meta, Microsoft, and China's ByteDance. These companies are required to adjust their platforms to make competition healthier on the block. For example, they must ensure they're not giving their services preference over rivals on their own platforms. Google, for instance, can't force users to select its own search engine on Android phones when they set up their devices and must show alternatives like DuckDuckGo or Ecosia. All right, so what are the changes now that are happening because of this? The Digital Markets Act has led to significant shifts in tech giants' operations in the EU, prompting adjustments as competitors express discontent. For instance, Apple faces criticism from developers like Microsoft, Spotify, and Epic Games for its implementation, while Meta announces interoperability for its messaging apps subject to Signal's encryption protocol. So let's take a look at the article itself. The rules have already sparked big changes for tech giants and how they serve customers in the EU. Apple recently announced it would open up its iPhone and iPad to alternative app stores, which is huge, by the way, because, the App Store was it was the end-all be-all of Apple. So that's the only way you could get any kind of apps on any of your Apple devices unless you jailbroke it, but then that breaks the warranty. So this is huge. Now, different kinds of app stores, like possibly the Google Play Store or other ones that I'm not even aware of, will now possibly be able to be accessed on an Apple device. Isn't that crazy? And Meta also says Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp can now work with third-party messaging services so long as they follow the Signal end-to-end encryption protocol to ensure privacy. Very cool.
Cool beans.
Cool beans.
But is all this change for the best? Google has introduced a choice screen on Android phones for selecting default search engines, which I have seen recently. Not fun. Aiming to enhance competition. However, critics argue that this could complicate user experience, potentially benefiting large booking sites like Booking.com over smaller establishments. For Google, meanwhile, there's now a choice screen that lets users pick which search engine they want to set as their default on Android phones, enabling the likes of Microsoft, Ecosia, and DuckDuckGo to get a place in a list of multiple search engine providers. Google recently added even more choice screens. Rivals say this makes things unnecessarily complicated, as users have to click more than they'd like to in order to set their main search provider. With Google, the actual search engine will change as well. The company removed flights from the search results for EU customers, and search findings now also come up with a carousel of ads from price comparison sites when you look up a hotel. Some experts worry that this will actually lead to large online booking sites like Booking.com benefiting from the changes rather than small local hotels. All right, so now we've seen what the DMA is and kind of what it's doing, but why? Why is this a thing? So let's jump into the Wired.com article now. The dominance of American tech companies in the EU has raised concerns among lawmakers, prompting the enactment of regulations like the Digital Markets Act. Critics like Yanis Varoufakis, apologies for the pronunciation, argue that these companies operate like digital empires, likening their control to feudalism, which has spurred calls for increased competition and regulation. So let's jump right into the article. Citizens of the European Union live in an internet built and ruled by foreign powers. Most people in the EU use American search engines, shop on American e-commerce sites, thumb American phones, and scroll through American social media feeds. Hey, God bless America, right? Right? Rock, flag, and eagle! Well, that fact has triggered an increasing alarm in the corridors of Brussels as the EU tries to understand how exactly those companies warp the economy around them. Yanis Varoufakis argues the big US tech platforms have brought feudalism back to Europe. The former Greek finance minister sees little difference between the medieval serf toiling on land he does not own and the Amazon seller who must subject themselves to the company's strict rules while giving the company a cut of each sale. I mean, if you want to compare it that way, but that seems a little much.
It's a bit extreme.
Anyway, the idea that a handful of big tech companies have subjugated internet users into digital empires has permeated throughout Europe. For years, Europe's wannabe big tech rivals like Sweden's Spotify or Switzerland's Proton Mail have claimed that companies like Google, Meta, and Apple unfairly limit their ability to reach potential users through tactics like pre-installing Gmail on new Android phones and Apple's strict rules for the App Store. It's not a problem to be a monopoly, but it becomes a problem if you're starting to exclude other people from the market. Actually, in a past video I did on Apple versus Beeper, the Beeper app, and against Spotify, kind of delves a little bit more into this and really explains what the whole battle was. So if you're not familiar, you can check out that video as well. Moving on, this is all about holding big tech accountable. Unlike past approaches of breaking up companies, this law focuses on opening up their core services to competition, potentially reshaping digital experiences for EU residents and imposing hefty fines for non-compliance. In the past, regulators have proposed containing corporate giants by taking them to pieces. EU lawmakers have adopted the motto, "Don't break up big tech companies, break them open." In theory, that means big changes for EU residents' digital lives. There will also be limits on how users' data can be shared between one company's different services. The law also gives the EU recourse to the nuclear option of forcing tech companies to sell off parts of their business. Whoa. Of course, however, it's not like these big companies don't have anything to say about all of this. Tech giants like Google and Apple are alarmed by the implications of the Digital Markets Act, which concerns ranging from potential changes in search results to security risks. Despite legal challenges and claims of thriving competition, the DMA aims to foster innovation and support emerging European tech companies, although doubts persist regarding its effectiveness in reshaping the dominance of major tech players. So let's get into the article again. Most tech giants have expressed uncharacteristic alarm about the changes required of them this week. Google has spoken of difficult trade-offs, which may mean its search results send more traffic to hotel or flight aggregators. Apple has claimed that the DMA jeopardizes its device's security. Again, if you haven't checked out that video that I did on Apple versus the world, basically, it talks about this quite a bit. There's the whole Apple ecosystem and how everything is supposed to be closed and everything's done in the name of security. And now it looks like the DMA is kind of cracking this wide open, which is kind of exciting and possibly scary if you're an Apple user. If you're an Android user like me, you're used to this kind of thing. The DMA wants to make it normal for new household names to emerge in the tech industry, to drive innovation so that smaller businesses can really make it. Many hope some of the new businesses that make it will be European. For almost every big tech service, there's a smaller homegrown equivalent, from German search engine Ecosia to French messaging app Ovid and Polish Amazon alternative Allegro. Never heard of them, but maybe they're pretty good. Who knows? All right, let's bring this home and see how the DMA is really letting those floodgates open here. DMA enforcement will focus on app stores initially, revealing power struggles among tech giants without immediate user convenience improvements. DMA aims to prompt Europeans to reconsider convenience versus corporate control, reshaping online engagement. Today, US-based Epic Games said Apple had terminated its European developer account soon after Epic announced it would take advantage of the DMA to open a new game store for iOS. Go Apple. Apple told Wired that Epic was untrustworthy and Apple has the right to terminate the accounts of any of Epic's wholly owned subsidiaries following a 2021 court judgment. Apple chose to exercise that right. Apple chose violence, in other words.
You must always choose violence. Violence is the way.
App stores will be an early area of focus for DMA enforcement, but Europeans can't expect the internet to transform overnight. In its early days, the new law's effects will be more about the power struggles behind the curtain of the world's biggest companies, not about making netizens' lives easier. In fact, their online experience is likely to get messier at first. This dominant position that these companies have is partially because we have been so addicted to convenience. The new rules will mean that users have to re-engage with what they want their online lives to look like. Defaults set by US corporations will no longer be chosen for them. Instead, the DMA's objective is to remind Europeans what they traded in exchange for that convenience in the first place. The DMA is about power, not necessarily convenience. Whether Europeans will be able to remember that as their online worlds are cracked open remains to be seen. So again, we're in the beginning of all of this, but this is a really kind of exciting and possibly scary time as these, governments from around the world are stepping in to basically rein in these tech giants and say, hey, we're not comfortable with what you're doing with our data, what you're doing with your app stores and how you're running your business here in our markets. So you got to change or you got to get out. And I don't know about you, but I've noticed some changes already in my day job when we're dealing with sensitive data in regards to some of our clients. A lot of our clients are now opting to use those file share like Dropbox or like Kiteworks, any kind of thing to really keep documents secure so that this information is locked down. There's not a lot of eyes on them. They're not exposed to a lot of people, and it's all about privacy. So all these privacy laws. And now we've got app stores opening up. The possibility of having different app stores on an Apple device is wild. I wouldn't have thought that would happen in 10, 20, 30 years even. I thought just Apple was going to keep going the way that they've been. But it looks like, at least in Europe for the time being, that's going to change. And then I wonder how that will have a ripple effect across the rest of the globe, in the United States, here in Brazil. If Europeans have the right to have access to other app stores on an Apple device in their region, who's to say that people in other parts of the world won't push for the same thing and want the same thing? So again, we don't really know how this is all going to shake out. This is still a new thing that's just unrolling here. But it's exciting. So what do you think? And that wraps up today's episode of Tech Tuesdays. I hope you found our discussion on the EU's digital regulations insightful. Now I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on the DMA and its impact on the tech industry? Make sure to leave a comment down below and let's keep that conversation going. Plus, don't forget to visit skyrocketenglish.com.br for all your business English needs. Whether you're looking to improve your vocabulary or brush up on your communication skills, we've got you covered. And if you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to check out past episodes of Tech Tuesdays on our channel. It's a great way to stay up to date with all the latest news from the tech world while practicing your listening and reading skills in English. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on Tech Tuesdays with Skyrocket English.
What?